We're going to look at multiplying a fraction times a whole number. Before we do that, I would like to look at writing a mixed number or a whole number as an improper fraction. Up at the top, we have 6 1/3. So we're going to write this as an improper fraction, and hopefully you remember how to do this. You take the denominator and multiply it times the whole number. 3 times 6 is 18. Add the numerator, which is 19, and the denominator stays the same. So 6 1/3 is equivalent to 19/3. In the middle, we have just simply 5 wholes. How do we write that as an improper fraction? Hopefully you remember the easiest way to do it is to just take the whole number and put it over 1. There's other ways to write 5 wholes as an improper fraction, but the easiest way is to just put it over 1. And remember, the fraction bar means divide, so 5 divided by 1 is equal to 5. So of course, 5 is the same as 5 over 1. So down at the bottom we have 24 wholes, and if we want to quickly write that as an improper fraction, we can just put it over 1. 24 is the same as 24 over 1, or 24 wholes. Now finally we're ready to multiply a whole number times a fraction. On the left side we have the whole number 12 and the fraction 1/4, and we know that this is multiplication because of is the same as multiplying, so it is multiplying a fraction times a whole number. I'm going to show you how to do this 2 ways. So on the left side I'm going to show you how to do it the first way, and then on the right side I'm going to teach you a second way to do it. When you work independently, you can solve it either way. You can use either method. So on the left side, we have 1/4 of 12, or 1/4 times 12. And so one way to solve this is to solve it in your head and think, what is 1/4 of 12? What is 1/4 of 12? That's just 12 divided into 4 pieces. 1/4 of 12 is 3. Another way to solve this is to just solve it like we have been and multiply the 2 fractions. So we have 1/4 of 12, so that means 1/4 times 12. And so now I'm ready to multiply, but when I multiply fractions, I need to multiply the numerator times the numerator and the denominator times the denominator. So our second factor here, 12, is not in the format numerator over denominator. But if you think back to the last slide, the easy way to write this as a fraction is to just put it over 1. Now we can multiply this fraction. We have 1/4 times 12 over 1. And before we do that, let's see if there's any opportunities for us to simplify. And I'm looking here, and there's one numerator and one denominator that can both be divided by 4. So 12 divided by 4 is 3, and 4 divided by 4 is 1. And now I can multiply the numerators, so I'm going to multiply 1 times 3, which is 3, and multiply the denominators, 1 times 1, which is 1, and my answer is 3 over 1, which is equivalent to 3. 3 over 1 is equivalent to 3 because the fraction bar means divide, and so 3 divided by 1 is equal to 3. I got 3 both ways, and you can solve it either way. Now here's another one, 2/5 of 40. So now on the left side, I'm going to solve it in my head. So I'm going to think of what is 2/5 of 40. Well, 1/5 of 40 is 8. And so 2/5 would be 2 of those 8s, which is 16. Or you can just solve it by multiplying. So on the right, we have 2/5 of 40. That means 2/5 times 40. And so they need to be in the format numerator over denominator. So I'm going to take my 40 and write it as a fraction. There we go. Now it's numerator over denominator. So I've got numerator over denominator, numerator over denominator. So I have 2/5 times 40 over 1. And now I'm going to look to see if I can simplify, and I can. 40 divided by 5 is 8, and 5 divided by 5 is 1. I divided one numerator and one denominator by the same whole number. I divided them both by 5, and now there's no more opportunities to simplify. So now 2 times 8 is equal to 16, and 1 times 1 is 1. So my answer is 16 over 1, which is equal to 16. Now we have 1/3 times 21. So if I want to solve this in my head, I just think what is 1/3 of 21? 1/3 of 21 is 7. Or on the right side, I can just multiply. So 1/3 times 21 is the same as 1/3 times 21 over 1. Now I look to see if I can simplify, and I can. I can divide this 21 and this 3 by the same whole number. I can divide them both by 3. 21 divided by 3 is 7. 3 divided by 3 is 1. Now I can multiply the numerators. 1 times 7 is 7. Multiply the denominators. 1 times 1 is 1. And 7 over 1 is equal to 7. My answer is 7. 1/3 times 21 is 7. Now on this slide, I have 3/8 times 32, which is the same as 3/8 of 32. Well, 1/8 of 32 is 4. So 3/8 of 32 is 3 sets of 4, which is 12. So I solved that one in my head. Over on the right side, we're going to solve it by multiplying. So we have 3/8 times 32. So I'm going to take this 32 and put it over 1, because that's the same as 32. 32 is equivalent to 32 over 1. Now I'm ready to multiply, and I should look to see if I can simplify, and I can. This numerator 32 and this denominator can both be divided by 8. So 32 divided by 8 is 4, and 8 divided by 8 is 1. Now I can multiply the numerators. 3 times 4 is equal to 12. And I can multiply the denominators. 1 times 1 is 1. And there we go. My answer is 12 over 1, aka 12. Now we have 1/5 of 11 on the left side. So I'm going to try to solve that in my head. What is 1/5 of 11? Well, this one's a little tough to do in your head. See, the reason is because the 5 doesn't divide evenly into the 11. So when that happens, you're just going to have to solve it by multiplying. So we have 1/5 of 11, which is the same as 1/5 times 11. So we need to put the 11 over 1. And now we look to see if I can simplify, and I can't. There's no numerators and no denominators that can be divided by the same number. So I can multiply the numerators. 1 times 11 is equal to 11. Multiply the denominators. 5 times 1 is 5. So my answer is 11/5. And we're going to simplify that and write it as a mixed number. So this means divide. 11 divided by 5 is 2, and there's 1 left over, and the denominator stays the same. 2 and 1/5, which is the same as 11/5. So on the right side, we would just take the of, write it as a multiplication symbol, put the 11 over 1. We can't simplify, so 1 times 11 is 11. 5 times 1 is 5, and my answer is 11/5. And we know 11/5 is 2 and 1/5, because we just did that. Now we have 9 times 2/3. If you want to solve this in your head, it might be easier to think of it as 2/3 times 9, or 2/3 of 9. So 2/3 of 9, well, 1/3 of 9 is 3, and 2 of those makes 6. So now over here on the right side, we can just multiply. And so I'm going to take the 9 and put it over 1, because 9 is the same as 9 over 1. And I can simplify here. Here's one numerator and one denominator that can be divided by the same whole number. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. And then we'll multiply the numerators. 3 times 2 is equal to 6. And 1 times 1 is equal to 1. So my answer is 6 over 1, which of course is equal to 6.